I don't think I ever imagined what a visit to the state of Oregon would look like. What it would entail. And I certainly never placed it on the path of a healing journey to the Americas. Years ago, my little sister Elodie and her husband Ben lived in Portland.
This is our house.
But they've long since moved away. Trees, lakes, Portland weirdness. That's about all I knew of Oregon. In July of 2021, after exploring a dozen states with my journey companions Glenn and Zil, we found ourselves in the Pacific Northwest. So I reached out to my brother-in-law's family to reconnect. It had been 7 years since I met the Duncans at Ben and Elodie's wedding. But I was about to witness the transformation of each member of the family. Mike, recently separated from 18 years in corporate America, moved on to forge a new business, creating custom products from CNC routing and engraving.
It kind of grew from a hobby that I would do for fun into I'm making money with this now.
Kelly had recently suffered the loss of a friend and awakened to a new, more spiritual way of life.
And for me, I think it started when a coworker committed suicide, and it really hit me hard.
Megan, only 20 years old, was basking in the success of her new business and TikTok popularity, creating custom t-shirt designs.
I got off work and my video had like 500,000 views.
And we get to spend time with Marianne, Ben's grandma.
Who took this picture?
Elodie. This is my mother's grandparents. My grandfather's right there.
During this week-long visit, we also met the neighbors. With Maurice, I donned the bee suit and dove into the world of beekeeping.
That preserves the pollen so that it will last the entire winter.
Stephanie taught us about homesteading before opening up about the loss of a child and the resilience needed to carry on.
It was never an option for me to not bounce back from this.
In this episode, we will get into each of their stories and what I learned from this chapter of the journey. Welcome to Wake and Wave. Arriving at the Duncans was like a fairy tale. We pulled into their driveway in the middle of a pine forest. Mike and Kelly greeted us, and we immediately jumped onto a video call with Ben and Elodie. After a tasty homemade pizza dinner, Mike took us outside to show us his latest creation.
Is this automated?
I just built that. Yeah, it's a remote control lawnmower. I bought motors off of eBay from like wheelchairs. And then here has, ever seen like the battle bots and stuff like that on TV? So these are motor controllers out of battle bots. And then I had to tone it down a little bit. I didn't realize how fast it would go.
Mike and Glenn hit it off instantly, geeking out on the technical specifications of this custom build.
It probably weighs a couple hundred pounds.
I must admit, I found it interesting as well. But I spent much of this male-bonding time catching up with Kelly before we headed upstairs to Mike's workshop. It was immaculately organized and full of machines I didn't know a thing about. But Mike started by showing us the products that he creates.
So we sell a ton of like these kind. These are tap handles, like beer taps. Reverse laser engraved the acrylic on there. Cut out all the holes for these.
This was right up Glenn's alley.
Yeah, you make your template to make the jigs, and then
You send it over, and then when you send anything,
love it.
Mike promised he would later show us how these products are made. But it was getting late, so we agreed to reconvene in the morning for a show and tell.
Man, this is like the crappiest part here.
The following day, we sat down for an interview with Mike about business, relationships, and a science-oriented view of spirituality.
So watch this. Hey Alexa, tell me about Mike.
Mike is a god among men.
As the recession went by, came in 2008 or so in there, it got tougher in the corporate world, and it just wasn't going exactly where I wanted to go. And about the same time, I kind of started making some stuff on the side with a little CNC router that I had built. It is a router that will automatically cut stuff out. You program it to cut out shapes or route 3D logos and stuff like that in. But it started with wood and just little beer carriers that you would put somebody's logo in, and made some for some friends, and then we put some on Etsy with Kelly's encouragement, which I didn't initially want to do because I didn't think Etsy was anything more than old women selling quilts, but it turned into much more than that. Started buying equipment like the laser engravers and stuff like that, and a bigger router to do stuff, and it just kind of grew from a hobby that I would do for fun into I'm making money with this now. And that was in 2016. So we've been doing this, or I've been doing this full time since then.
Okay, and it's working well now.
Yeah, it's just growing like
rolling.
crazy.
Amazing. And family was supportive of the transition?
Very much so. So Kelly, in fact, she's the one that said, you're getting really frustrated with your job. This seems to be going well. Why don't you quit and give it a go for a couple of years? And I hugged her and told her I love her.
Was it a difficult jump?
Very much so.
Were you scared?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't making the money I was making at a corporate job when I quit. And so I really had to find places that I could pull myself away from that line of thinking. And, where I'm indoctrinated into the corporate world. So from giving up what I had learned was important all those years to switching over to what I think I wanted was probably the scariest part. If you're going to take the island, burn the boats, right? Because if you know you have a safety net, you have a plan B, right? Sometimes it's better not to have a plan B. You got a plan A, and if this doesn't work,
What was the most awkward moment in all of this? Like the most difficult or awkward moment?
Probably from going from being myself and doing everything to hiring people to do stuff. It's a hard thing from a couple perspectives. One is that it's my baby. I know how to do everything, and this is how I want it done, right? But you're never going to get freedom if you do that, and you're never going to grow past what you do. And so hiring my first employee and having them work on orders and stuff just was amazing. It took a big leap in the growth of the business and just the enjoyment of it too, because I got to work on the things that A, I needed to work on, and B, that I wanted to work on. It would be really hard to do this if your family wasn't supportive, because there's always people that will tell you, you need to stay with that job. You need to support your family. You need to do this. You need to do this for retirement and stuff like that.
Were there?
Yeah, there was a few, but it depends on who you surround yourself with too.
Right.
And so honestly, sometimes that's the joy now, is being in that zone of I'm not 100% secure, right? I'm doing something new.
Getting out of your comfort zone,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
There is a spiritual component to it. A spiritual as in taking care of my own spirit and just, not letting myself go down into despair or a fear that is paralyzing me. So there are psychological elements, how do you make yourself go through things without giving in to fear. And but I see a parallel, and just we don't call it the same thing, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you talk about the spirituality side of stuff, because people think that because if you're practical and you're logical and you want evidence for stuff, that you can't be spiritual or even see that from that perspective. And that's not true. I mean, for me, spirituality can be found in a lot of stuff. I'm not religious at all. For me, stuff when people talk about crystals and stuff like that, and they talk about frequencies and this kind of stuff, for me, that kind of falls on the objective truth kind of things, because as an engineer, I'm going to say, all right, we can measure the frequency and the vibration of a crystal. We can do that. We know if that's what it's doing. We can do double-blind tests to determine if it has an effect on you and stuff. So it's all stuff that you can measure. Like, we love doing outdoor stuff. So if we hike back to a lake and there's an awesome lake with a huge rock background and, you know, it's just the most beautiful place that you've seen, you know, to me, I'm in awe. You know,
It's
that's
feeding
like,
your spirit.
that's my spiritual side, like
Yeah.
that. Or stuff with, you know, my dad passed away and he was a big influence on how I build stuff. So even now I'll be doing something and be like, oh, thanks, Dad, I appreciate that.
The
you know?
spirit is there.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
When I was younger, things were a lot more black and white.
Mm.
You know, if I was right, and I knew it was right, I could prove I was right. That was my goal. I had to show you I was right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the impacts to
The relationship.
the relationship. It's really interesting how when you come from different backgrounds, how your communication styles are. So for instance, my family was very demonstrative. We always hugged, we kissed, we told each other we loved each other. We fought too sometimes, but you know, you would basically just get it out and be done. And then you have other families that are, you know, Kelly's was not demonstrative like mine. And she was so surprised that when I came to see my mom and dad that I gave them a hug and a kiss and this kind of stuff. And sometimes we have to have pretty direct conversations because I can be kind of thick sometimes when it, you know, with stuff. And we get so busy, you know, that you don't connect on how are you feeling, am I doing something that's pissing you off, or,
Right.
you know, what's important to you right now, and that kind of stuff.
Do those conversations come naturally? Like
No.
they come in the course of difficult things happening? How does this work?
I think as we get older, we do that more. Before it would kind of, I don't know, we just did our thing, right? And we had things going on, and I don't think it affected you as much. As you get older, I think you realize that it's important that you have boundaries and that you have, you know, how you interact. And yeah, my very best friend, he's very much different politically than me.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's a tough one.
but we would die for one another. So you have those kind of friends. Same thing with religious people. I mean, I have friends that are religious because I would be like, how can you believe that stuff? And he would talk, and you know, we'd go back and forth, and it was never a uncomfortable time. It was more like a interesting.
So that's what's new in me getting older. Is being able to accept, realizing that acceptance actually is a process, and that there is nothing to accept if you already agree with everything. If you're already on the same
Right.
common ground, there is no process of acceptance. You see that this is blue, that you don't need to accept that this is blue because it's already blue for you. To be able to be in front of someone and say, wow, we are so different. There are moments of torment and moments of difficulty, and it feels separating, but being able to pass through this is just
Yeah.
wow.
It's hard sometimes not to hold judgment, right?
That's exactly right.
And see things because you don't know that person's backstory. You don't know what's happened in their life. You don't know what got them to where they're at. You know, maybe they didn't have a strong family, or they didn't have the education opportunities that you had, or they had this kind of stuff. So whether or not Kelly believes that something I believe that isn't going to impact us is...
Would you think a world without duality would be a nice
no.
world to be in?
No.
I mean,
Exactly.
everybody's thinking the same.
No, I don't think you want that. Now, the hardest part of that isn't in the corporate world or dealing with other people. The hardest part of that is in a relationship with your wife or your loved one.
Right.
We talked for a few hours on camera about a variety of topics. It was such a pleasure to absorb some of the wisdom and humor of Mike throughout our visit.
So I'm not going to tell you thank you.
Okay, well, you save it till later.
But no, thank you, really,
Oh,
for playing the game.
well, thanks.
Okay, so let's see the girls.
Kelly wanted to show me the treehouse on their land, suspended high in a pine tree overlooking the property and the forest. As I climbed the ladder and first peered inside, I saw something very familiar. It was my sister's handwriting on the wall. Kelly told us that Elodie and Ben slept there during their last visit. I felt this strange bond with my sister at that moment, a bridge through distance and time.
So that's where they slept?
I think they slept on the futon down below.
We shared stories about our family from the porch of this tiny home, before heading to the main house to talk about the recent changes in Kelly's life.
So there is still this very warm aspect of your personality, but there is a dramatic change in you. Would you talk a little bit to that?
So I think probably one of the instigators of a change would be a traumatic event. And for me, I think it started when a coworker committed suicide, and it really hit me hard. And so the loss was felt so deeply. And for me, it was such an incredible waste because this person was absolutely unbelievable. And it got me questioning about, how things work and, when there's a suicide, how that reflects in the spiritual world. And I kind of started delving into more of the paranormal. That kind of opened up the door to start watching some documentaries and watching, different shows on reincarnation, children that have gifts at a young age.
Was there an intent to communicate with your friend, or what was the process, the mental process, in order to start investigating this kind of topic?
I don't know, just to be able to cope. It was like a coping mechanism to kind of research and figure out, explore a little bit more about the spiritual realm and question, what maybe others think than outside the, religious constructs of punishment and non-punishment. Right. The openness, the loving, the acceptance, the knowing, or at least feeling that when you pass to the next world, there is, a process, and not knowing what that process is, but what feels right, So when you hear stories about reincarnation, a lot of people don't believe that you can maybe come back and do a life again. But that resonated with me, especially with Lynn having passed the way she did. I thought, well, this is a great way to cope and really feel that this soul it's not done. There's opportunity to work through whatever traumas that she was experiencing that nobody really understood. So whatever darkness she was going through at that moment when she decided to take her life doesn't define what's going to happen to her from that point on. It just is part of the journey. So I thought, okay, it's time to not just go with the flow and try to please everybody. I'm starting to develop my own specific thought processes and belief structures, and it's okay to be open about that and express myself as a different person, because 6 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, I was a completely different person than I am now. And I got to a point where, wait a minute, I'm a valid human being with, thoughts and ideas, and it's okay to express them. And if somebody doesn't agree, I don't have to be offended by that. I can still be me, and you can find a way to find common ground and be respectful with one another. So as I'm evolving as a person spiritually and becoming more confident and more able to be who I am and not be afraid to express who I am, it's a shocker to those around me because it's not something I've ever done.
Is there a process of freeing yourself that is growing and growing and growing?
Gosh, absolutely, because now I feel like, okay, I can express who I am. I don't have to try to be such the people pleaser anymore. It's okay to not have to be the one that takes care of, making sure everybody's content, or...
And it's already your job.
Exactly. And as a nurse, you're nurturing, you're taking care of, you're doing all of this. And for me to learn that lesson that, it's okay to do me. And for me, for the longest time, I kind of coasted along the same vein. And it's like I hit that plateau or whatever with Lynn's death as the kind of catalyst for me to stop and really question things.
What was the process, if you can dive a bit more?
I think I internalized it more than anything until I could kind of come to grasps with what I was experiencing, because I was so confused why it hit me so hard, you know, like I just didn't understand how that could happen. And then I started second guessing, you know, did somebody do this to her? Was it, you know, there was all of these things going through my mind. And for months down the road, I would just out of the blue start bawling. And I don't usually show emotion like that. Privately I would, but I would just start crying in the kitchen. Mike or Megan, what's wrong? I'm like, just a thought would pop in my head about Lynn, and I would just lose it. And I'd never experienced that before.
Yeah.
And I was so confused because death didn't affect me like that. When Grandpa passed, when I was a teenager, I cried for a moment, like 10 minutes on Mom's lap, and then I was fine. And that was the other piece of it. It's like, okay, did I really know this person? And then you start really questioning how well do you know yourself? How well do you know those around you? So that, I think, really was a catalyst, because it was so an unusual response from me to have been so affected. And then as things came out to light from the investigation, the medication she was on, it makes sense that she was not clearly thinking, and that's what. So, you know, then there was more closure and understanding, okay, you know, if she was confused, I get it, but this is not the person that I know. She would never do that, you know, never leave her 6-year-old daughter, all of these things.
It got dark very quickly, and we were eaten alive by mosquitoes. So we headed inside to have dinner, then continued the conversation.
You're enjoying this so much. You're enjoying this so much. It's hard to believe we're working together on this, you know? Because you're enjoying this so much.
But it looks like you are too.
No, I'm not. I'm not enjoying
I
it.
had a bit too much wine with our delicious meal, and I was falling asleep. But it still didn't keep us from continuing our talk.
Kelly. Yes. How about you tell us who you are?
We picked up our conversation about natural healing, and Kelly gave her insight on the topic as a nurse.
And so it's finding that balance. There is absolutely some wonderful things that the drug companies produce, you know, that save people's lives. But if you look to nature, you can find a lot of those healing properties as well. And so it's finding that balance.
And in any case, originally medication are made based on plants.
Exactly. Foxglove is your digitalis for heart patients. So there's a lot of medication that's derived. You know, there's the yew tree that's a cancer agent. And my way of thinking, the indigenous people had it dialed in. They knew what worked and what didn't, but we've lost that art. That's really important, to really have an open mind about, okay, you can use a bunch of modalities to treat somebody. You don't have to just focus on one. Herbal remedies, you use nature, you use, you know, Western, Eastern, whatever can come together. And I've seen some videos and documentaries on some amazing healers that a lot of people would think is hocus pocus, but it seems to work. I think a full circle transition, you know, like when you're growing up, you're so focused on what you're taught or what society teaches, what media teaches. And when you start questioning things or start really analyzing or getting in touch with yourself, you start to kind of come back to nature, come back to the grounding piece. And that's the other thing, you know, earthing, taking your shoes off and walking through the dirt and getting your ionization. All of those things, you know, a lot of people think, oh, that's just hocus pocus. But no, how many people, when they're really stressed out, want to just be in nature? Why is that? I think that at some point when things start to get sick and there needs to be a change for it to continue on, there's an awakening, so to speak, or a need to, we got to do something different because this isn't going to work.
But I do want to say that it's been a very important sojourn, stay here for me.
I loved it.
I think it began before arriving even, and I grew a sense of, oh, I'm going to visit, you know, my extended family. But Kelly, you're amazing.
Oh, well,
I
thank you.
guess that's what I want to say. Like something just emerged out of you, and gosh, it's good to hear Kelly, like
That's
to hear
awesome.
where you are in the very first 10 minutes we spent together, if not the first few minutes.
That's amazing. And I appreciate that validation too. And I'm honestly of the mindset too that things happen for a reason. People are put in your path, in your journey of growth.
Right.
And the fact that the two of you are so receptive to understanding where I'm coming from, getting that validation is huge. And I think this being able to express and open and feel, oh, okay, this is good. This is a good thing. It's universe way of saying, you know, you're on the right path. Continue on.
Yes, totally. And this validation is actually essential until you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Until you can find this in you.
Right.
And it's just pure enjoyment of yourself, who you are, and your place in this world. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
To be honest, I bet you it's about 11.
In the morning, I made sure to spend some time with Megan and witness the runnings of her new business creating t-shirt designs.
How old are you?
I'm 20.
20.
I'm gonna be 21 in September.
That's wonderful, huh? Where did you learn this?
I learned all this from YouTube.
Okay.
And just doing it. I just thought it would be like a fun hobby side thing to do because I also wasn't in school at that time. And then it turned into way more than a hobby. In just a
Quickly?
matter of, 9 months or so. Probably even less than that because, I started in November and then February I had a huge blow up from TikTok where I did a lot of orders. It was like 300 orders a day that month.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from nothing, so when you said you were not planning on it to be a business, it was just a hobby, you were not planning on selling even?
No, because I listed that one shirt on Etsy and it sold and I was like, oh, this might be fun to make like a little bit of extra side cash. But I didn't know that it was going to be like all my attention on this instead of other work. Yeah, by myself. And then when I started getting crazy orders, my mom would come sit in there and watch me do them. And then it got to the point where she had to start doing stuff.
And she was willing to.
Yes, for free. And now this is her second job.
What's that big laugh?
Her work ethic is just from her. It's unbelievable.
Well, I first blew up on TikTok and I was at work that day and I got off work and my video had like 500,000 views and like so many comments and everything on my Etsy shop sold out. Like not even the shirt I had a video on, just like everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, because at this point I had like no inventory because it was at the very beginning. And so I was freaking out. I like got off work. I had over 100 Etsy notifications. I had people messaging me on Instagram and it was just crazy. And you kept hearing my iPad because it goes ka-ching every time you get an order.
Wow.
And so my iPad was here so she could hear it, but my phone was off because I was at work. I was probably awake for like 3 days, honestly. I did
Trying
not
to
sleep.
fulfill the orders?
Yeah. My friend Gracie and my friend Kira came over. They helped me all day long. I got pizza and stuff and they just helped me pump out a bunch of orders. But it was really hard because every time I would do an order, I would get like 5 more. So I wasn't making any progress.
What have you learned in this whole adventure?
How valuable time is, how to be a little more hands-on, creative. I learned a ton about like computer stuff, which I do not like. Who supports me, who doesn't.
That's an important one, right?
And he's the entrepreneur designing one. This is the helper.
Yeah.
The helper. Wow, but you have a solid team.
But I feel like all of these like are also a part of me. So that's why I like it. Like I love chickens. This is where my first design came from. And then just like the gardening and stuff like that. And then I feel like I wouldn't do any shirts that like wouldn't mean anything to me, you know.
Attention to detail is beautiful.
Thank you. It's ready.
It's very pretty. Well, Megan, I'm very, very proud of you, and I'm very proud of the big heart part, I must say.
Thank you.
And the way you share.
Thank you.
It was incredible to see how much Megan had grown since we last met and the young
great.
woman she had become.
This life helps keep quiet also, keep your mind quiet. Huh? It recharges you.
During our visit, we had daily encounters with the local deer. There is a part of me that is always so curious about wild animals.
You are beautiful. I'm here just looking at you. Everything's okay. Yeah, you can eat. It's all okay.
But the other part of me wants them to remain wild. I watched these deer through the week and couldn't help but mirror them to my current state of emotions. I know it's only my perception, but I saw their need for love and attention. I saw anger and competition, sometimes violent tendencies. I saw laziness. I saw hunger and thirst. I watched one come from the hillside at the prospect of food, seemingly split between trust, fear, reluctance, and survival.
7 meters, 10 meters maximum from him right now, right? Yes.
I had never been so close to a deer before, and I was thrilled to even see one at that distance.
I can't believe it's so close
It
to me.
ate slice after slice of apple, inching
That one?
closer and closer,
This is unbelievable.
like there was an unspoken bond of trust between animal and human. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than for this deer to eat the last slice of apple from my hand. Yet, in the same breath, I felt that these animals were being tamed,
Okay.
changed from their wild nature.
Bye-bye.
I feel the same duality with Zil, observing his reliance on humans, far from his canine counterparts in the wild. But it's not just food and water that he depends on. It's also love and affection. At times, I feel like he would die without it. I see his obedience and his craving for attention. I also see his need to be independent and wild as soon as we enter nature, or as soon as he encounters a new curiosity. Sometimes, I find myself upset at Zil. But it always comes down to the way I feel about myself in the moment.
It has that lens right there.
Mike turned out to be a natural teacher and made very complicated things seem simple.
So this is where your board is.
In preparation for our visit, he had designed the bird for us to
It'll
engrave.
engrave that bird in there, and then it will come around and cut the bird out. And so this is saying it's going to take a little over 4 minutes to engrave it.
Glenn was already familiar with these machines and processes from owning a previous business. But I learned about the software and hardware involved in creating such interesting products. Mike taught me the basics on how to run the laser engraver and let me assist in bringing my new bird to life.
Alright, so you should be able to just pick it up out of there.
As I pulled the piece from the engraver,
That's so cool.
I could feel the intricate designs etched within and smell the sweet scent of burnt wood.
Yeah, I'm happy I chose this one.
Doesn't look as angry.
It was a stunning piece of art that still holds such significance for me. A gesture of time and love that would hang in our rearview mirror for much of our journey to come. Glenn decided he wanted to create something for his brother, Tanner. So he spent a day making a novelty design for some custom bottles as a gift. There's a very long and intricate story having to do with this, including the theft of a beer mug, a very high friend, and a synchronicity so unbelievable that it will take forever to explain correctly. So we will save the details for a later episode.
Alright, let's clean it off and see if...
That's awesome.
Alright, will that work?
You'll love it.
The finished product was incredible, and we carried it on the road for a month until we finally met up with Glenn's family.
Are you filming me struggling going down? Yes, you are.
We kept hearing stories about the neighbors during our visit. And one day, while on a walk, I met Morris.
You know, it's actually one of my dreams.
Oh,
I've never done that.
really?
Yeah, I'm not
I'll be
joking.
darned. Okay, well, this will be an opportunity.
For years, I had been interested in the world of beekeeping. And now, I was about to learn more from a passionate expert in the field.
I have an electric fence because of a problem with bears.
Come for the money?
Actually, they come for the baby bees.
I feel like this is the untold secret of
Yeah, right. I
The
just
real
found
lives
out.
of
Oh, we
bears.
need the food. That was not
like,
true.
oh, it's so innocent. They just want the honey. No, they're after the bees.
No, especially the babies. The babies don't sting. Honey is really a no-brainer. I mean, they're going to do that regardless of how good or bad you are at it. But to raise queens involves a lot of different steps. Probably heard that a lot of the bees are gone now. They've died of a parasite. If they can get an opportunity for a free meal, they're going to go for it.
The bees?
They
So
absolutely.
from other hives?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you can't let that happen. So it's kind of interesting. There's a lot involved. There's a lot more than people realize, but it's just fascinating. It's really an amazing thing. Well, let's put on some protective equipment. So I'm going to have you wear this. It might be easier for you if you sit down.
I'm really excited.
Yes, excited was the word. But I was actually surprised that it wasn't fear. As I donned the bee suit, I felt safe and protected.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, actually.
Okay.
I'm just trying my
Oh, you're doing good here.
Right? I'm trying.
Maurice patiently helped me gear up before preparing a suit for
I'm
himself.
going to have you sit down so I can zip up your legs. The hive that we're going to look at is one where the queen did not make it. And I had just opened it up this morning and discovered that she did not make it. So when the queen doesn't make it back, then the workers take over her job. And then they start laying eggs.
We set off toward the other side of his land to investigate his first mating hive of the 2021 season. When we arrived, we started by lighting burlap and pine needles inside a smoking canister. The smoke of natural materials can help calm bees within the hive by masking the pheromone communication signals. Once the bees settle down, we open the hive.
This is medication that I was telling you about, the oxalic acid. It's this stuff. Brand new. You can see honey.
Wow, yes.
See the honey glistening?
Yes. Never been that close.
And they store it behind these cells. So if you scrape them off, you can see the honey. And that's what they store for the winter.
I have a habit of holding my breath around bees. Is that true? The rumor that they smell
They do.
and they pick up on that as a threat?
They do, yeah, they tune into the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is some truth to that. All this material here is pollen.
Okay,
And all this over here, the different colors,
okay.
you know, it's just like flowers, different color flowers have different colored pollen. And that's why you see different colors in the pollen. You see it's like a little caterpillar.
Yes.
And in some cultures, they eat these. They're very high in protein, about 3 times the amount of protein than steak. Yeah, it's pretty high. But the reason why this is shiny is because the bees have to store this for the entire winter. Well, the way they do that is that they add a little bit of honey to it. That preserves the pollen so that it'll last the entire winter. Now here's the same situation. You can see the babies in there, see the grubs? And those are all males. And the way I can tell that is that if it was a female, the cells wouldn't be sticking out like that. They would be flush with the rest of the comb. One of the things that distinguishes the males from the females is that they don't have a stinger.
Oh.
This bee is a lot bigger than those other guys. If you notice, their head consists almost entirely of eyes, whereas the females don't. Yeah, this is a male, and you can see it's much bigger than the other ones. They've long since lost the stinger, and now, you know, their main function in life is to mate with the queen, so they don't really need a stinger anymore. Now the queen has a stinger too, but her stinger is different than the other bees. Her stinger is not barbed; it's just like a hypodermic needle, as versus like a hook for a fish, for fishing. That would be barbed.
So the only thing that makes them lose their stinger is that it is barbed and it stays in it? It stays in the flesh?
Yeah, it stays in the flesh, and then when they try to pull away from the flesh, the stinger stays in there and vital organs are attached to that stinger, so they die right away. So she'll go along and she'll walk up to the cells and she'll put her front legs into the cell. Now, mind you, this is all in the dark, and she'll feel the diameter of the cell. If it's a large cell that the bees intend to have male bees in, then she doesn't fertilize that egg. If she walks up to a smaller cell that's destined to be a worker, then she'll allow that egg to get fertilized, and then she lays that fertilized egg into that cell. So the workers are actually controlling how many males and females are in the hive by simply determining the size of the comb that they're going to build. So if they need more males, then they produce the larger cells. If they don't want males and they want just females, then they produce the smaller worker cell. So let's take a look at another hive. This hive was a swarm, and when they arrived hungry. They didn't have any food at all. So, and that's typical of the swarm. Only 5% of all the swarms actually are successful in starting a new colony. What I'm doing is I'm giving them sugar water so that they'll have resources to make it through the winter.
When did you arrive?
Oh, these guys were combined not too long ago. You can see the medication strip in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this hive is a little different. They're getting ready for winter. Yeah, they're really a tremendous misconception that people have about bees. I mean, if they were near as aggressive as people thought, there wouldn't be any bees because they die when they sting.
Right.
So if they went around flying around stinging people, there'd be no bees.
Right.
They'd all be dead. Oh yeah, I've been doing this 53 years.
When did you find out you wanted to do this?
Actually, I was interested in it for a long, long time, but my parents were definitely not into me keeping bugs. I got into major trouble just because I had an ant farm. And then, that was another whole story.
Oh no!
But big trouble because of that.
It's really an amazing experience.
Well, what'd you think of that?
For now, I'm a bit speechless. I was really looking forward to actually be close to bees, like physically. And I was anticipating to be scared. And what's the most important right now is how comfortable I feel.
Good.
Like when I saw you taking off your gloves, I was about to ask, I can take off mine too.
You could.
It's funny because I was born in an island full of bugs.
Oh, wow.
In Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. But my grandmother scared me with bugs just to get me down from the avocado tree or the mango tree. And then I moved to Paris and I became very civilized. And I was scared of bugs, but something was calling me.
This was it.
I decided I needed to get closer to nature.
Well, you got a good dose of it today.
Hearing about the stories of how much they were dying, that's when I decided that I had to be less scared of them. And I realized there was no aggression. There wasn't any aggression,
No.
and I never get stung.
We exchanged more stories as we got out of our bee suits. To me, this whole experience was an affirmation that I was on the right track. One step closer to nature and to what I imagined this journey to be.
So there is something about an inner change in contact with nature. that I'm
Yeah, it
experiencing
changes your attitude.
Very much.
If
Yeah.
your perception of things alters, I agree. I
And
love that.
it alters also the way they behave with me.
That's
Because
exactly
of the
right.
pheromones. A few days ago, I just went to a dragonfly, and it flew and came on my hand and stayed for a little bit. So I can see the connection with nature is totally changing. It's okay, you can
I
just
know.
keep moving on, and it's okay, you can forget that episode. Wow, that was an amazing experience.
Good,
Thank
I'm
you
glad
for
you enjoyed
sharing,
it.
Morris.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Very much enjoyed.
Well, next time you come visiting, come visit me too.
Oh, I
All
will.
right.
I definitely will.
Okay,
Thank you
very
so
good.
much.
Okay.
It was great.
The following day, Mike took me to meet one of his other neighbors, Stephanie. From the stories I heard from Mike, I thought Stephanie and I would be talking about ranching and farming, but I quickly realized it would be so much more. She took us down the hill behind her house, revealing acres of farm and agricultural lands.
We can take a little tour.
She started the tour by showing us one of her passions, Gotland sheep. Through the recent use of artificial insemination, these sheep are now being established in the United States. And Stephanie is one of only a few people breeding these rare animals.
They came from New Zealand, and we implanted them in a couple of my ewes.
Gotland sheep are known for having a very docile disposition and form strong bonds to their shepherds.
He likes his shepherd. He's a little wary of strangers.
She took us around the farm and showed us her large vegetable gardens. She grows enough vegetables to feed her family and enough extra to help feed the community.
I want to show people that you don't have to have hundreds of acres to farm.
Right.
You know, there's a place for small farms. It's really amazing. It really works.
You feed about
Cucumber.
15 families?
A week, yeah, about,
week?
yeah,
Wow.
for about 4 or 5 months. That's, you know, and then I feed my family pretty much all year long.
It wasn't long before we started talking about much deeper topics.
She and I were in a car accident, which is its story in itself. We were in the car together and a car got hit by a young man who was speed racing his friend on the road. So just really kind of
We agreed to head back up to the house to sit down and talk. Stephanie opened up about the tragic loss of her daughter, Hilary.
It was never an option for me to not bounce back from this.
I grew up in a farming family, in a fairly rural part of France. We didn't talk about feelings very much. You know, it was imprinted in me. You know, it was not super easy for me to reach out to psychotherapy to help me through that. I did do it. And it was helpful, you know. It was helpful. Most of the psychotherapy that I did was with a person who was very literate in wisdom tradition, and he was basically able to help me lay out, okay, what happens after death? You know, there are all these different things that people are thinking. And I basically, I mean, it might sound very simplistic, but I basically, because I did not grow up, I was not brought up with any religious background, I picked up what made sense for me.
Right.
I picked up what made sense. I just needed enough reassurance that I could get up in the morning and move forward. But it's a big step for me. You know, just trying to unstuck some of the, you know.
I've heard great results with the EMDR.
I have too, so I'm trying it. And it's mostly, you know, because losing a child affects my parenting skills with my younger child.
How so?
You know, I have a lot of fears. I just know what it is to, you know, never get to say goodbye to your child, or 1 second they're here and the next they're gone, you know, and that's very present. I try not to let fear run my life, but at times it's hard, you know, so I'm hoping that this work will help me unblock some of those, you know, images, sort of rewire some of those feelings and sentiments. And I think that's why I am coming to a place in my life where the work needs to start again. I feel like it's almost like the second phase of it, you know. So there is the forgiveness of the 2 young men who made this happen. I know these people are in a community that is not so far from here, you know. I know they were put away for quite some years, you know, which brings no relief whatsoever. Even though I know that I didn't do anything wrong that day on the road. I was the caregiver of my daughter, and she died in my care.
You survived.
And I survived, you know, and so there's a huge amount of guilt. And it pops up here and there. You know, I'll have like really intense moments where I can just embody everything that happened, and I just, you know, it's almost like it's physically aching, and it'll pass, and it passes, because, you know, time is your biggest ally. Time, just, you put time between something and
how long ago was this?
It was 11 and a half years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So time almost makes everything bearable on the day-to-day, you know. But big things, so guilt and forgiveness, big chapters that I'm feeling are needing to be tackled down. Because I'm sure you've met some of these people, and maybe we were even like that when we were younger. We did things that were stupid. Mm-hmm. You know, we had stupid behaviors where
we just didn't meet what would bring this kind of consequences.
Exactly, or we get lucky and we never hurt anybody. I mean, to tell you the truth, you know, it's parents of these kids, you know. I mean, they're not super young, but I'll call them kids for lack of a better. I mean, they were upset, and for them thinking that we had something to do with the fact that they were going to go to jail for a while, but that's completely beyond our control. There has been no attempt made on their part to try to find any kind of closure, you know, or just simply say, I am so sorry. You know, this was never done. This was never done. And it's hard. It's hard. You know, I went through this period of time where I was so aware when they were going to come out of jail. And I have to say, in all honesty, I was a little worried. I was actually kind of worried that they were so upset that they had been put away, that they would try and come and hurt me and my family and my other children. That's what I was really worried about. I have a lot of fears. I don't have fears about wildlife. I don't have fears about the work that I do where I could get hurt. I don't have fears. I have simple fears of people sometimes, you know. And I'm aware that this contributed to exacerbating. I just don't have faith in people a lot of the time.
It's a great challenge. Huh?
Yeah,
It's a very, very great challenge.
You know, in spite of the fact that I am here a lot alone, doing whatever, feeling whatever, sometimes crying, sometimes being angry or whatever, you know, it reminds me that, yes, you know, we need each other to share with, you know, and it's very timely with where I am in my life, you know, it always is. Yeah, it's really amazing. And coming at the end of this COVID strain, you know, I mean, I don't know where we'll be in 6 months. We might be back to where we were, but yeah, so it's all very timely. There is a part of me that contemplated for a very brief time to forget that I had even had that child. You know, because her life was so short. Why can't I just forget about it? See what I mean? I mean, it's impossible, but it's something that came to my mind.
When we met yesterday, you mentioned something that you felt a couple of times.
Oh,
about
yeah.
Hillary.
Yeah, the hands of... Yeah, I had two very, like... first of all, when Ellery passed away, it was very, very windy, stormy January time. Lots of storms, rains, and rainbows, and storms, rains, and rainbows, and just this entire week that followed her passing. And we were able to bring back Ellery to some of our best friends' land and to bury her on their land. And we made a little altar that was very, very, very simple, with just little pieces of wood. And we, for 10 days after we brought her back, there was always somebody there, sitting there and just being there. And we would take turns with all the people who showed up to help. And we always had candles. I burned candles at that place without ever stopping for probably close to a year. That candle, that little candle that was hardly protected by anything, never went out in spite of the weather, in spite of the rain and the storm. It never went out. And trust me, I've asked so many times, show me my daughter in my dreams. You know, I've just talked to whatever, the trees, and it's never happened. I have never dreamt of my daughter, ever. I'm always reminded of how much it's shaped my life on this land. How, yeah, a lot of what I do here is what we started together, you know. It's always been important to us to grow food, to live on the land, to be good stewards of the land, to teach that to our kids. My husband is really good about this. I really wish he could be here more, and he's such an introvert in so many ways. But he's such a great man. Oh my gosh. Just so much integrity.
Our conversation with Stephanie continued for a couple hours. To this day, Her story has been one of the most impactful for me on this healing journey. I am supposed to write about Oregon back in July 2021. But it is February of 2023. And I feel like writing about what I feel now. Surely, some of my thinking is inspired by the time I was in Oregon since I watched the film Glenn put together again. I feel like I'm on a mission. I compare the way I looked then to the way I think I look now, because I won't go as far as grabbing a mirror to check. I remember the time we spent shooting these scenes, and then I remember what happened around these scenes. How those we met touched my heart. How much they inspired me, made me laugh, appeared strange to me saying one thing or another. And finally, I see how fondly I remember people who crossed our path. They all contributed to my evolution, to who I am now. I have wanted to share Stephanie's interview since we sat with her. Her words have been a powerful engine to my journey, but the sensitivity of her sharing at once scared me. I worried I would make a mistake, miss a step, or step outside of my place, although she had been nothing but encouraging all along. I am no longer the same person I was when we filmed this. Ellery's memory, through the gentleness and kindness of her parents, blossomed as a tree of life in my chest, reminding me of the greatness of our humanity, even through, or especially through, loss, tragedy, or hardship. There is a breeze in my heart. At the time of recording this narration, we are in the state of Yucatan, Mexico. It has taken 1.5 years to settle down and start finishing some of these episodes. But as promised, they are coming. If you like this episode and want to enjoy more like it, please visit our YouTube or Spotify. For interviews with Stephanie, Mike, Kelly, Megan, and Maurice in their entirety, please check out our YouTube channel. Thank you, and have a beautiful awakening.